Throughout the course of human history, war has traditionally been viewed as a domain reserved exclusively for men. Women, by common belief, were seen as ill-suited for the brutality of the battlefield, especially on the front lines, where life and death are decided in the blink of an eye. Yet, there was one woman who shattered all notions of gender roles and defied the rigid expectations of her time. Not only did she take part in some of the most violent battles of the modern era, but she also etched her name into military history as the most decorated female combatant of all time. Her name was Milunka Savić, and her life reads like an epic ballad, part legend, part fearless reality. Born toward the end of the 19th century in a remote Serbian village, few even recall her exact birth year. Some records cite 1888, others list 1890. In this quiet, impoverished corner of the world, where daily life revolved around farming and tradition, no one could have imagined that one of the greatest female warriors the world would ever know would rise from such obscurity. Milunka's childhood passed as one might expect for a rural girl of her time, humble, unremarkable, and without any signs pointing toward her future as a battlefield hero. But fate intervened in 1912, when conflict erupted across the Balkan region. The First Balkan War began as a coalition between Serbia, Bulgaria, Montenegro, and Greece, aiming to push the weakening Ottoman Empire out of European territory. However, within a year, that alliance collapsed due to territorial disputes. Bulgaria suddenly turned against its former allies, sparking the Second Balkan War. As the fires of war spread, Milunka's older brother was drafted into the Serbian army. But instead of allowing him to leave for the front, Milunka cut her hair, donned men's military attire, and enlisted in his place, using his name to conceal her true identity. The motivation behind this bold act remains the subject of debate among historians. Some argue she was driven by fierce patriotism. Others believe she sought to protect her ailing brother, who may have suffered from tuberculosis. Still others suggest she simply longed to escape the confines of village life and yearned for an adventure like no other. Whatever the reason, one thing is clear: Milunka didn't just pretend to be a soldier, she became one. After completing basic training, Milunka was assigned to the Iron Regiment, one of Serbia's most elite and battle-hardened military units. Although the First Balkan War was nearing its end, the Second War erupted with even more intensity. There was no time to rest. Milunka was immediately swept into the chaos of combat and quickly proved herself as a force to be reckoned with. One of the most intense battles she took part in was the Battle of Bled, considered a turning point in the conflict. During this fierce engagement, Bulgarian forces launched a relentless series of attacks on Serbian positions. The Iron Regiment, where Milunka served, stood directly at the heart of the battle. 9 times the Bulgarian troops charged, and each time, Milunka and her comrades held the line, repelling every assault with unwavering determination. Milunka fought with the same ferocity and skill as any elite soldier on the front lines, throwing grenades, charging into enemy trenches, and constantly lifting the morale of her comrades. Her exceptional courage and combat abilities soon caught the attention of her superiors, and she was swiftly promoted to the rank of corporal, earning several commendations for her extraordinary performance in battle. But fate dealt a cruel blow during the 10th enemy assault. A bullet from the opposing side struck her directly in the chest. When Milunka was rushed to a field hospital for emergency treatment, a shocking truth came to light. The fearless frontline soldier who had been fighting bravely all along was, in fact, a woman. The medical team, stunned by the discovery while treating her wound, could hardly believe their eyes. It's said that when Milunka regained consciousness and realized what had happened, she gave a faint, ironic smile and muttered, "Well, it looks like fate decided to play a trick on me." News of her true identity quickly reached high command. The officer in charge at the time found himself caught in a difficult dilemma. Under Serbian military regulations, women were strictly prohibited from serving in combat roles, and by all rules, Milunka was supposed to be reassigned to a rear-line position, most likely as a nurse or a logistical support worker. But Milunka had no interest in retreating from the battlefield. She firmly rejected any offer that didn't allow her to fight. Standing tall and unwavering, she met her commander's gaze and simply said, "If I have to wait, I'll stand right here until you decide." An hour later, the officer returned, not to remove her from service, but to do something unheard of in Serbian military history. He promoted her to the rank of sergeant, solidifying her place on the front lines. Not long after, Europe spiraled into chaos. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary set off a chain reaction that ignited World War I. Serbia, where Milunka served, quickly became one of the first flashpoints of the global conflict. Without hesitation, she was deployed to the battlefield once more. She saw action in the Battle of Sir, one of the early skirmishes of the war and the first Allied victory. Shortly after, she took part in the Battle of Karubara, a momentous counteroffensive that would go down as one of the most remarkable operations of modern warfare. Though the Serbian army was vastly outnumbered and outgunned by the Austro-Hungarian forces, they didn't just hold the line, they drove the invaders back. Milunka, as always, was in the thick of the fight. In that battle, she performed an act of sheer audacity and valor. She broke away from the trench alone, sprinting across no man's land, that deadly, exposed zone where artillery shells exploded and machine gun fire tore through the air. Armed with nothing more than her rifle and 2 belts of grenades, she charged directly toward the enemy's defensive position. With unshakable determination, she stormed the first enemy trench, subdued 20 Austrian soldiers, and marched them back, alone, to Serbian lines. Her fellow soldiers could hardly believe what they were witnessing. But Milunka wasn't finished. As soon as she handed over the prisoners, she turned right back around and launched another solo assault, this time targeting a second trench. During that attack, just as she was clearing out the remaining enemy troops, a shell exploded near her position, causing a severe head injury. Though some of the details surrounding her story may have been embellished over time through legend and oral tradition, no one has ever questioned Milunka's bravery. In recognition of her valor, the Serbian government awarded her the Order of Karađorđe with Star and Swords, the highest military honor the nation could bestow. Just a few months later, during another fierce battle, she once again displayed extraordinary courage by capturing 23 Bulgarian soldiers. Remarkably, she was granted the same prestigious decoration a second time, an honor rarely bestowed even upon male officers. As the tide of war shifted and the Serbian army was forced to retreat, it eventually merged with French forces. The legend of Milunka continued to spread among the Allied ranks. However, not everyone was convinced by tales of this exceptional female soldier. Among the skeptics was a French general named Maurice Selle who doubted the stories being passed around the barracks. During a lull in one of their campaigns, this general, known for his arrogance and deep skepticism, decided to put Milunka's reputed skills to the test. In front of a gathering of officers, he placed a rare bottle of 1880 vintage cognac atop a wooden post about 40 meters away. With a half-smile that was equal parts challenge and mockery, he turned to Milunka and said, "If you can hit that bottle, your unit gets the rest of the case." Without saying a word, Milunka raised her rifle, aimed calmly, and fired. The sound of the shot rang out sharp, steady, and precise. In a single crack, the bottle shattered into pieces, prompting a wave of stunned applause. The French general said nothing further, and her comrades cheered as though they had just won a major battle. That night, Milunka's battalion celebrated with laughter and fine cognac, and from that moment forward, no one ever doubted her combat abilities or her courage again. The war raged on, and Milunka remained steadfast, fighting alongside both French and Serbian troops across various battlefields. She was wounded 9 times, yet never once did she ask to be removed from the front. Even when her injuries hadn't fully healed, she returned to the trenches. For Milunka, fighting wasn't just a duty, it was a part of who she was. When World War I finally ended in 1918, Milunka wasn't just a survivor, she had become a living symbol of heroism. Her achievements earned the admiration of her entire military corps. In total, she received 12 prestigious medals, placing her among the most highly decorated female soldiers in recorded history. Her awards included Order of Karađorđe with Star and Swords, awarded twice for exceptional heroism. Miloš Obilić Medal for bravery, honoring actions that went beyond the call of duty. Order of St. Michael from the United Kingdom. Cross of St. George from Russia, honoring resilience on the battlefield. French Legion of Honor, Légion d'honneur, not once but twice. Croix de Guerre with Gold Palm, an extremely rare distinction. She was the only woman in World War I to receive it. Her remarkable story inspired admiration across Allied nations. As a gesture of gratitude, the French government, on behalf of the coalition forces, invited her to move to Paris, offering her a comfortable apartment and a lifetime pension. But she declined without hesitation. "I didn't fight for France. I fought for Serbia, and I will live in the land I bled to protect," she said. When the war finally ended, Milunka returned home with a simple wish to live a peaceful life, far from the sound of gunfire. She married a man who worked at the local post office and began building a small family, giving birth to one daughter and later adopting 3 orphans, continuing her spirit of service, this time in peacetime. But life was anything but easy. Her husband left during a difficult period, leaving Milunka to raise the children alone, carrying the weight of both provider and parent. With no formal education or academic background, she had to take whatever jobs she could find, working as a postal clerk, a factory laborer, and even a cleaning lady in government buildings just to keep her family fed. Though once celebrated as a hero on the battlefield, in daily life Milunka faded into the background like countless other women of her generation. But she never complained. Quietly and steadily, she continued writing her life story, not with weapons, but with patience and perseverance. When the dark cloud of World War II once again loomed over Europe, Milunka didn't stay on the sidelines. This time, however, she didn't take up arms. Instead, she served her country by establishing and managing a frontline field hospital, tending to hundreds of wounded soldiers under dire and dangerous conditions. Though no longer in direct combat, her courage remained unshaken. Yet her dedication didn't earn her any respect from the Nazis. In fact, after she refused to attend a formal banquet held by German officers, an act considered both insulting and provocative, she was arrested by the Gestapo and sent to a concentration camp. There, she was imprisoned for 10 long months, awaiting execution. Her fate seemed sealed until, by chance, a high-ranking German officer recognized her as the war hero once admired across Europe during World War I, fearing that executing her would turn her into a martyr and symbol of Serbian resistance. The Nazis quietly released her without explanation, and no mention of her release was ever made public. But if her survival felt like a second chance, what came next was even more cruel. The very nation she had once risked her life to defend now turned its back on her. In the post-war years, with communists rising to power, the regime actively suppressed recognition of figures linked to the old monarchy. Veterans of past wars were often labeled as remnants of the past. Milunka, once revered across the continent, was relegated to poverty and obscurity. Though she was later granted a small state pension and a modest apartment, she spent most of her remaining years doing manual labor, most notably working as a janitor in a bank. No fame, no glory, just a solitary life powered by the quiet resilience of a warrior who never gave in. She passed away in 1973, likely around 85 years old, after suffering a stroke. At her funeral, only a handful of relatives and elderly acquaintances came, those who still remembered her once legendary past. There was no state funeral, no national tribute. It was as if a legend had been buried by time. But history didn't forget her forever. 4 decades after her passing, in 2013, the Serbian government officially recognized her heroism by transferring Milunka Savić's remains to the Alley of the Great in Belgrade, a resting place reserved for the nation's most exceptional sons and daughters. It is the highest posthumous honor any Serbian citizen can receive. Since then, her name has been given to schools, streets, and included in textbooks as a symbol of national pride. She is not only remembered as a symbol of patriotism and resilience, but also serves as a reminder of the unsung heroes, those who were once forgotten by the very nation they fought to protect. In fact, many people don't know that in 1959, she was invited to attend the presidential inauguration of Charles de Gaulle in France as one of the most decorated veterans present at the ceremony. Milunka never sought the spotlight. She didn't fight for glory or fame, she fought out of pure love for her homeland, a love that was quiet, unwavering, and more powerful than any victory anthem ever written. In the grand story of human history, she will forever be remembered as a soldier, a symbol of defiance, a heroine of her time, perhaps the greatest female warrior the world has ever known.